Oh boy, I'm excited, aren't you excited? It's the end of the year, and despite dates themselves having no real significance beyond our human interpretation of time and order in the universe, we're expected to reminisce on the previous 12 months and look to the horizon with hope, as though the world itself will suddenly become better because a number on my taskbar says it's the new year. I'm definitely gonna follow through on my New Year's resolutions. After all, it's now January 1st as opposed to December 31st. It's a completely different time, and certainly not an arbitrary distinction of dates, no different than the transition between August 15th to August 16th. In all seriousness, I probably ought to do one of these year-in review type things. It's been an eventful year in gaming, a lot has happened, not all of it good, and I would be remiss not to reflect on both the good and the bad. It's easy to trick yourself into thinking everything was awesome. I'd rather not take the easy road most often traveled. By the way, I'm saying this metaphorically, I'm not walking. 2014 was arguably the worst year for gaming since the turn of the century. Makes it sound a lot worse when you phrase it like that. Unlike previous console generations where the first year of the cycle brought about a slew of innovative, exciting new games, releases in 2014 were sparse and mostly underwhelming, except for a handful of really great indie titles. Worse yet, many of the growing bad business practices of the previous decade became pronounced and painted a pretty bleak picture with regards to the direction of the industry. Over the last few years, the frequency of new great games has gotten a lot better, but the negative attributes of the business side of the medium have been exacerbated to the point that it's becoming a serious problem with legitimate economic and potentially legal ramifications. Excluding the initial point of sale, microtransactions are now the foremost method of revenue raising in the majority of big budget titles. I think it's safe to say at this point that a video game released by one of the major publishers devoid of any microtransactions is freakishly rare. Thrown onto the pile alongside season passes and the ever popular day one DLC, the complete game is headed towards extinction, at least on the AAA big budget front. As somebody who values my money, this is obviously disconcerting. With many new games, I find myself presented with a crappy choice: only pay for the original release and receive an incomplete experience, or part with even more of your money to get the full game. It's like I'm choosing between a cactus and a sharp place. The common counter-argument I see in favor of microtransactions being implemented in games we already have to pay for is that video games are expensive to develop and cannot turn a profit without such systems in place. First off, you say that like it's my fault. I didn't dictate the budget of Call of Duty World War II or Need for Speed Payback. Second, it's not even true for the most part. Star Wars Battlefront sold 14 million copies in 1 year. If that wasn't good enough to net a profit for EA, the industry is completely fucked. Personally, I'm willing to concede on that standard $60 price tag. Taking inflation into account, video games used to cost more than they do now despite their comparatively smaller budgets, and the prices remained at the current level for over 10 years. A price set prior to the global financial crisis, I'd like to add. I would gladly pay $70 for the microtransactions and day one DLC to go the fuck away. What we need to realize as consumers is that focusing on the importance of the profit margins for publishers tends to contradict our own self-interest. In an ideal world, the free market should feature a symbiotic relationship between the consumer and the company, but there is a big difference between capitalism and corporatism, and we are getting pummeled right now. Shadow of War and Star Wars Battlefront 2 mark significant milestones in the discussion of unethical business practices. Depending on the reaction from the gaming community at large, it could have been either the turning point or the point of no return. Based on the serious ramifications the controversy has brought upon EA, including a significant decrease in their stock valuation, lower sales by comparison to the previous game, and generally universal disdain for the model shown by gamers, it's safe to say that, for the time being, gamers have won this battle. But microtransactions are still too lucrative for the war to have been won that easily. Content sold via microtransactions requires little additional work and yields extremely high profits. It's all digital content and virtually none of it is externally developed. Look, I understand why so many publishers force them into games. I understand why they're the backbone of the mobile market. It's an ingenious money-making system, but it negatively detriments the quality of the games themselves, and good games stand the test of time, not the games with the most profitable business model. The The console gaming landscape has changed considerably over the last 12 months, for better or worse depending on your preferences. What used to be known as a console generation, rigidly defined by the release of a single standardized machine which could reasonably be expected to last for at least 5 years, is no more. Mid-console generation upgrades are now a reality, and in many ways have rendered the previous iterations of the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One redundant and obsolete. As has been occurring since the release of the Xbox 360, consoles are shedding their defining characteristics and are simply becoming PCs with limited functionality. These changes to the inherent generational structure of consoles are now presenting a strange dichotomy which never used to exist, with a few exceptions in the case of the 32X. The original Xbox One and PlayStation 4 systems have been supplanted not by brand new consoles, but upgraded machines belonging to the same ecosystem. To me, the interesting question raised by this new order is, how are gamers influenced by mid-generation console upgrades? I haven't used my Xbox One in over a year, so I really don't care about the existence of the Xbox One X, but if I were purely gaming on the Xbox One and didn't have the cash to purchase an X, I would be feeling pretty jaded. Sales and flat out cheaper variants of consoles are already a kick to the testes, but realizing that your system has been replaced wholesale must sting, especially as one comes to the realization that they'll be receiving very inferior versions of all games, not just third-party titles. And this isn't an instance where the lifespan of the console has come to a natural end, it's been cut short on purpose. Especially as the generation continues to chug along, will the original iterations of these consoles be able to keep up? I would be surprised if the next generation systems released before 2020, so the PS4 and Xbox One owners who got the original variants will be playing on hardware that was outdated in 2013 in a generation where objectively superior versions of the same systems exist. It's quite the predicament, one I think will really be brought to the forefront in a few years' time. Undeniably, 2017 has been the year of Nintendo. Coming off the heels of their least successful console, the Wii U, Nintendo were really struggling to maintain relevance. I mean, for crying out loud, even by 2016, some people still believe the Wii U was an accessory for the original Wii. The game's totally dried up by the later years, and I think many of us were extremely skeptical of Nintendo's long-rumored NX following such a disastrous console. The game's totally dried up by the later years, leaving the few Wii U owners like me up to dry, and I think many of us were extremely skeptical of Nintendo's long-rumored NX following such a disastrous console. It feels good to be wrong. The first year of the Nintendo Switch is one of the best success stories in the gaming industry over the last decade. A system which managed to elegantly bridge the gap between handheld and console gaming with the best first-year exclusive lineup since the PlayStation 2. With regards to their most well-renowned IPs, Mario and Zelda, both franchises received extremely unique and innovative new installments. Better yet, the immediate future is already looking bright with regards to exclusive games from the big N. Nintendo being able to focus their home, console, and handheld teams on one system almost guarantees a solid stream of exclusive games. Pokemon on the Switch is likely to be a game changer. The announcement of Metroid Prime 4 was enough to sell me on the system, and with the knowledge that Bayonetta 3, Yoshi, Mario Kart, and Smash are still on the way, along with Retro's currently unannounced new project and probably a handful of other games I'm forgetting about, I feel confident in my investment. I doubt I'm alone given the generally positive reception the system has received. I've yet to talk to anybody who owns the system who doesn't like it. It's a console which has brought Nintendo back into the game, and for a while, that didn't seem like a possibility. You know, I rarely come into the new year optimistic, at least in the sense that I'm not super giddy over the prospects of the next year being better for some reason. You know, I think it's fairly naive to just assume that things will be better because we'd like to think that they'd be better. The world is kind of messed up, and if you're anything like me, each day brings about a new struggle to keep one's own head from exploding, especially in this interconnected Web 3.0 world of ours. However, despite my generally bleak outlook on things, including the video game industry, the fact that I continue to participate in gaming speaks volumes to how great the medium itself is. I can't stop myself from loving video games, even when seemingly every 4 forces trying to push me away from them. With publishers attempting to swindle us and culture warriors seeking to warp the art for their own selfish reasons, gamers will likely continue to have to struggle to preserve the quality aspects of the medium, particularly moving into 2018, but also in the following years. But if anything has been proven in 2017, especially towards the tail end of the year, it's that gamers can influence the medium in positive ways when we all agree to promote what's in our best interest, because that's what every responsible consumer should do. Likewise, the sheer number of quality titles released in 2017 illustrates the talent and passion which exists in this industry, and that even when inhibited by outside forces, creativity itself can't be subdued. The gaming industry wouldn't exist without talented developers and passionate gamers, and in an ideal world, both parties prop each other up. Try to keep that in mind as the new year dawns.